I lied. I have three more responses. Um, here's one more. All three of these are on the second topic about the antagonist and the conflict and what's going on there. In To Build a Fire, the antagonist of the story is nature itself. Throughout the story, nature opposes the man, whether it is the cold, the snow, or the freezing water. The man got, quote, wet to the knees, London 71, and knew that building a fire was, quote, the most important at that low temperature, London 71. Or else he would succumb to the environment and perish. Nature also conspires against him along with his own mistake. While he is building his first fire after that incident, the fire loosened snow on an above branch, and the snow fell, extinguishing the fire. The conflict the man faces would best be described using the category of conflict known as man versus nature. The man is far from any person or group, and he seems sound-minded until panic sets in toward the end of the story. There's also seems to be a theme explicitly mentioned multiple times throughout the story, brought up primarily by the telling of, quote, the old man on Sulphur Creek, London 72. The protagonist had not listened when he was told that, quote, no man should travel alone in this country after 50 below zero, London 72. Once the man is all but doomed to die, he remembers those words, and he thinks that he most likely would have survived had he brought another man to his side. This highlights not only the theme that one should listen to advice given by a person of more experience, but that there is safety in numbers. To maximize potential, one might consider working in a team. Another one here. To Build a Fire by Jack London is a story about one man's struggle against nature. The story follows the man's trek along the Yukon Trail as he struggles against the bitter cold weather for his survival. Throughout the story, the man tries different methods to keep himself from freezing, such as building a fire. However, since the weather is so cold, hypothermia is inevitable and the man ends up dying. One of the central and most prominent themes of the tale is the dangers of being overly confident and arrogant. Before setting off on the trail, the man is warned by a wiser and more experienced man from Sulphur Creek about the dangers of traveling alone at such a low and dangerous temperature. Despite his warnings, the naive and ignorant man ignores the advice and decides to go through the trail anyway, thinking that he is superior to the man at Sulphur Creek. This thought is not only incorrect, but it also proves to be fatal to the man. At the beginning of the story, London states that the man, quote, was not able to imagine, and that, quote, he was quick and ready in things of life, but only in the things and not their meanings. London 2. This highlights the fact that the man is already highly vulnerable because he lacks intelligence and thoughtfulness, characteristics critical for survival. In addition, he also lacks experience. However, the man, overcome by arrogance, is unable to see his weakness. As he travels along the trail in the bitter cold weather and loses feeling in some of his body parts, he's forced to admit his stupidity. He thinks, quote, that the man at Sulphur Creek had spoken the truth when telling how cold it sometimes got in this country, and he laughed at him at the time. London 7. However, this realization only lasts briefly. After he is successful in building a fire, he quickly relapses into his arrogance and begins thinking irrationally once again. He thinks, quote, the man had been very serious when he said that no man should travel alone in that country after 50 below zero. Well, here he was. He'd had the accident, he was alone, and he'd saved himself. Those old men were rather womanish, he thought. London 9. This highlights the fact that the man prides himself on his masculinity and believes himself to be clever. However, soon after this thought, his fire is extinguished by falling snow. Without the fire, the man was dangerously exposed to the freezing cold weather. The man again was forced to admit the value of the old man's warning. He murmurs to the man at Sulphur Creek, quote, you were right, old fellow, you were right. London 6. This shows the man is finally able to see his arrogance and mistakes. However, it is already too late, and soon after his realization, the man dies. If the man had just listened at the beginning to the more knowledgeable man at Sulphur Creek, he would undoubtedly have been able to avoid the whole situation. The man had died due to his hubris. Unlike the man, however, the dog, who represents thinking untainted by arrogance, survives the cold. Due to the dog's humbleness, he is more aware of his situation and therefore better adapted to survive the extreme weather. Through his tale, To Build a Fire, Jack London highlights the dangers of hubris by showing readers a potential consequence of arrogance. The main character's overly confident attitude led him to become blind to his own weakness and vulnerability, resulting in his death. That's a quality response. One last one on the same topic, and then I'll sign off and call it a day. But hopefully these are helpful to you. Hopefully you're seeing the way your peers structured a response, the way they develop their response. Some of them are varying in length, but they're all pretty good, solid responses. Let me hit you up with this last one, and then we'll call it a day. In the short story To Build a Fire, the antagonist is nature, preventing the protagonist from completing his goal. Jack London teaches a lesson through this conflict, showing the dangers of hubris and not listening to those more experienced. The main character in this story has one objective: to make it to the camp on Henderson Creek by traveling along the Yukon Trail. What keeps him from his destination is the bitter cold that no man should be able to survive. However, the man ignores this, believing he has what it takes to battle nature at its coldest. The man had just had an incident while embarking on his journey, accidentally breaking through a layer of ice. He combated this by successfully making a fire, feeling proud of himself. Quote, "He remembered the advice of the old man on Sulphur Creek and smiled. The man had been very serious when he said that no man should travel alone in that country after 50 below zero. Well, here he was. He'd had the accident, he was alone, and he saved himself." London, 72. The man proceeded to get cocky over the fact that he had traveled this far in the cold, which evidently caused him to become careless. He had ignored the old man's advice, and that led to his untimely death, all because he believed he could beat nature. London solidifies this theme by the end of the story when the man is dying. At this point, the man had come to terms with his death and realized how much of a fool he had been once his fire had failed. He had this out-of-body experience where he imagines finding his body with the boys, thinking, quote, he did not belong with himself anymore, end quote. London, 79. The man knew as he was dying what the others would think and longed to be with them instead of dying from the inevitable cold. His last thought before the end is of the old man on Sulphur Creek. Quote, "You were right, old fellow, you were right." London, 79. By the end of the story, the man has learned his lesson, but at the cost of his life. This teaches the importance of respecting the people that undoubtedly have more experience in a subject or situation, as well as not giving in to the arrogance and pride a person may have. It reflects on real-life situations where people constantly battle between wanting to be right or listening to the wisdom from a more competent person. Sometimes it's better to give in to humility by listening to others rather than blindly entering a situation that the person might not be skilled enough for. Great, solid lesson at the end. Brought into the present day. Excellent use of quotations. A lot of these are really good essays. So, if you need to listen to it again before you write yours next time, go right ahead. Look at the way these students constructed their paragraphs and the things they said, and try and emulate that in your own writing. It's only through doing the work that you're going to get better. Thank you all for working. Thank you all for staying focused through these trying times. And I will be back on here inevitably with more stuff for you here soon. Have a good day.